Episode 2: The Inheritance. Liam's Perspective.
The next morning, I woke up with sunlight shining through the dusty windows. I hadn't planned to stay the night, but somehow I couldn't leave. The house felt different in the daylight. Last night, I had noticed that the house was old, but now it seemed even more worn out. The walls had cracks, and the floor made loud noises whenever I walked. The air smelled damp, more than I had realized before. As I walked through the rooms, I started to see more problems. The roof was leaking. There were dark spots on the ceiling. Outside, the garden had become wild. Weeds and bushes had grown everywhere, almost like they were trying to take over the house. So, I thought, it would be easier to just sell the house. I could have someone look at the repairs, put the house up for sale, and be done with it. That had been my plan from the beginning. However, as I walked through the house, something made me stop. I couldn't just leave. I found myself standing in the old living room, looking out at the garden. The sun was shining, but the garden was still a mess, with plants growing out of control. As I stood there, I remembered my childhood. I used to spend summers here, running around in that same garden. I would play with sticks, pretending they were swords. Back then, this house was full of life and fun. Uncle Arthur would sit in his chair by the steps, watching me quietly, but he never told me to stop. To be honest, I had almost forgotten about those summers, about how free I used to feel here. Then, something someone had told me came back to me. Maybe it was my father, or maybe it was Arthur himself. Liam doesn't know it yet, but he belongs here. At the time, I hadn't thought much about it, but now the words stayed in my mind. As a kid, I had felt like I belonged here. I loved coming to this house, running through the garden, exploring every corner. Back then, it had felt like a big adventure, a whole new world. But I had forgotten all of that. Somehow, over the years, I had buried those memories under my busy city life, and now they were all coming back to me. I touched the windowsill, feeling the rough wood under my hand. This house wasn't just an old building. It was a place where I had been happy. Arthur must have known that, even when I didn't. But the house still had cracks, leaks, and mold growing in the basement. The house wasn't just old, it was damaged, like the connection I had lost with this part of my life. Fixing it wouldn't be easy. In fact, it would take time, money, and effort, and I wasn't sure if I had that. So, selling the house would be the easiest choice. I could leave, go back to my normal life, and forget about all of this. However, as I stood there, looking out at the garden, I realized that selling it didn't feel right. This house was part of my childhood, part of who I used to be, even though I hadn't thought about it in a long time. Maybe that's why Arthur left the house to me. Maybe he had seen that, even when I couldn't. In the end, I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing. I couldn't leave. Not yet.